Velasco, and thank you for reading.
Manny Pacquiao, I told, I don't think there'll be a problem for Manny.
Has its share of great fights. But every once in a while, human mind can also be controlled and nothing. Again, happy nothing.
Ako po si Associated Filipino Sports 4 p.m.
Only here, para sa bayan. That's the opening bell for Round by Round presented by Eastern Communications. Mabuhay Pilipinas! Welcome world! I'm Nisi Casiano.
And I'm Bill Velasco.
Good news for Philippine boxing fans. Tuloy na po. On December 11, Jason Mama will get to vie for the IBF Flyweight World Championship against Sonny Edwards. The bout is set to take place at the Coca-Cola Arena in Dubai this December 11. Bill, maagang Paskong handog para kay Jason Mama. Wala nang atrasan at di na kailangan mag-intay pa ng 2022 para lang makalaban sa isang world title.
Kung ako si Sonny Edwards, kakabahan na talaga ako because you remember this fight was supposed to take place a couple of months ago, and
Yes,
Jason
correct.
Mama went through all the trouble of spending 2 weeks in Dubai just so he would not come from a red-listed country, just so he could enter the UK for the fight. And the moment he parks his butt on the bed in his hotel room, he's told that the fight is off. And this injury to Sonny Edwards, maybe between the ears, is something that you don't want to see happen to the boxer, but still the circumstances around it were quite fishy. Kung titignan natin itong dalawang boksingero to, identical records, but of course, Mama has a greater number of knockouts. And I think with this additional motivation, Sonny Edwards should be running scared. Also, they are fighting in neutral territory and
Yes, exactly.
not in Sonny Edwards' beloved UK, where the IBF likes to shelter a lot of its champions. So I think things are looking good for Jason Mama. But then again, we saw what almost happened to Jonas Sultan. So Jason Mama has to really go for the kill and go for the kill early against Sonny Edwards.
Bill, hindi ba nakakatawa na isipin na sa Dubai din mangyayari ang laban, which was, as you mentioned, which was the same place where Jason Mama needed to undergo quarantine before going to London a few months ago. Unfortunately for him, the bout was canceled. But come to think of it, there was already some form of foreshadowing of things to come. What do you think?
I think this actually is an added factor for Jason Mama kasi komportable na siya doon sa Dubai. Galing siya doon. That was pretty recent. That's about 2.5 months ago. So the good thing about it is 30% of the people in Dubai are Filipinos.
Yes.
I've covered fights there. I covered the Prince Albert Pagara fight there back in 2016, 2015, if I'm not mistaken. And the support of the Filipinos there is really tremendous. They're also looking for other forms of entertainment from the homeland. There are a couple of radio stations there that are run by Filipinos. The media is really in full support. Every time there are Filipino athletes or Filipino sports teams that go to Dubai. Kaya dadagsain yan ng mga Pilipino at magiging dihado lalo si Sonny Edwards despite the fact that he is the champion.
Bill, you mentioned about fighting in neutral ground. Tingin mo ba mas lalo pang napabuti itong posisyon ni Jason Mama sa kadahilanan na he will be part of a stack card with other Filipino boxing stars like John Riel Casimero and Donnie Nietes?
I think that's very important. Donnie Nietes has been to Dubai also before, and for John Riel Casimero, this is also going to be a big night for him. So this is going to be very, very interesting indeed because Pro Bellum also wants to make a big splash there. Casimero just wants to get this fight out of the way because of what went wrong with the first bid, and he was very unhappy about it. Donnie Nietes finally is going to, get his ascent back to being king of his division in boxing. And for me, it's very important for Jason Mama to be in that crowd, to be in that company. Anytime you're surrounded by greatness, it makes you up your game even more. And it's going to make Sonny Edwards feel quite lonely when he gets into the ring, because it's like he'll be fighting in Manila. And we all know what happens when you get the Filipino crowd backing a boxer. You know, we've seen it time and time again at all the venues here in the Philippines. Pero lalo-lalo na pagdating sa Dubai, dahil ang dami-daming Pilipino doon na naghahanap din ng libangan. Kaya para sa akin, all the factors are in the favor of Jason Mama, and I really hope that he becomes the world champion after this fight.
Bill, December 11 is shaping up to be a big day for Philippine boxing. As I mentioned moments ago, the card in Dubai will feature John Riel Casimero going up against Paul Butler for the WBO bantamweight title. You will also have the ring return of Don Nietes, and aside from the two, Jason Mama is gunning for gold. A few hours later, after that card in the United States, we will have Nonito Donaire versus Raymart Caballo in a WBC unification bout. In short, the whole boxing world will be watching at least 5 Filipinos fighting for supremacy inside the ring. And for an up-and-coming talent like Jason Mama, this is his chance to really put himself on the map, right?
Yeah, so for me, yes, definitely. In fact, I was just pondering this before we started this discussion. It's so early in his career for somebody like Sonny Edwards to be a world champion. I mean, 16-0 is an impressive record. But remember, Carl James Martin is already 17-0 here in the Philippines. And he's only, 22 years old. So for me, for you to be a world champion at that young an age, either you have to be exceptional or the deck has been stacked in your favor constantly. But like I said, they're fighting in neutral territory. It's going to be practically a home court advantage for Jason Mama. He'll have other big-name Filipino fighters. That's very intimidating for a young guy like Sonny Edwards. Even if you say he's world champion, we've seen so many world champions fall in their first title defense or their second title defense. So I think it's going to be a very good night for Jason Mama.
Well said, Bill. With that kind of fight lineup in a 12-hour time frame, indeed, Philippine boxing should gear up for a December to remember. Jonas Sultan is joining John Riel Casimero and Nonito Donaire in the sweepstakes for a fight against Japanese boxer Naoya Inoue. Bill, do you feel Jonas Sultan is biting more than he can chew at the moment because of the success that he gained from his last two fights? Or is it just setting up a future big goal ahead of him?
But let's remember that it's been 3 years since Jonas Sultan fought for a world title and lost. And for a lot of fighters, that's a very long time. But, we were talking about how big a night December 11 is going to be. And it's going to be an even bigger night for him because he's waiting for all of these fights to be over and done with. Of course, Inoue is fighting on the 14th of December. So he has to wait for all of these guys. And then those guys are going to have to take some time off because it's going to be the holidays. So he has to be patient because his only other option would be a rematch with Caraballo. And we all know that, the fix is in if he's going to fight Caraballo. He only won that unanimous decision by 1 point in all the judges' scorecards, despite having 4 knockdowns in that fight. Kaya delikado siya pag nag-rematch siya. So kung ako sa kanya, maghihintay na lang ako. Now, the question is, you were asking, is this biting off more than he can chew? I think if you're looking at the styles of the two, Inoue is going to be very problematic for Sultan, particularly given his style. No, Attorney Ed Tolentino broke it down for us. Na it's like Rocky Marciano. He lunges when he throws punches, and that sometimes takes balance. Now, Inoue is very surgical and very precise in the way he fights. That's why he's called the monster. Kaya delikado si Jonas Sultan pag pumatol sa dyan. Kung ako sa kanya, why not? He said he's reluctant to, but why not go after one of the other Filipino world champions? So, I don't know if Donaire is gonna have any problems against Caballo. So if Donaire wins, if Casimero wins, he can go after one of them. I'm sure they would give him a shot. So especially considering Casimero will want to fight again right away dahil pakiramdam niya, lugi siya dito sa kikitain niya dito sa laban na to. And at the same time, there's a lot of turmoil in his camp right now. It's a very dangerous time for him. So if he can get past Butler in this fight, then he'll want somebody who would be comfortable fighting. And for them, it's just business. No, for Jonas Sultan, of course, syempre, mas nakatatanda yung dalawa sa kanya, mas medyo hinahangaan pa niya. But that's boxing. You try to beat up whoever is put in front of you. So for me, mas gugustuhin ko pang maghintay siya kaysa pumatol siya sa kung anong ihain sa harapan niya. Dahil if he goes back into the ring against Caraballo, delikado siya doon. Kasi alam na natin, nakita na natin yung muntik na mangyari sa New York, di ba? Kaya sa akin, maghintay na lang siya. I mean, it will be worth it if he becomes a world champion.
I truly believe that the last two fights of Jonas Sultan were a big confidence booster on his part, but we cannot change the fact that he has yet to establish himself as a bantamweight, more so as a ranked bantamweight contender, similar to the case of Mark Magsayo as a featherweight ranked contender. Now, I just hope that MP Promotions can sustain the momentum of his most recent win, because it's too early to say if he will get a title shot. Number one, though he is ranked number 9 in the WBA, the Intercontinental title that is now in his possession came from WBO, and he's nowhere to be found yet in the WBO bantamweight rankings. But that win, that most recent win, may break him in the WBO rankings. Now, I would like to see Jonas Sultan in a 12-round fight first against an opponent who's outside top 10 or top 15 before taking on ranked fighters that will help him secure a world title shot. Ngayon, para sa tingin ko, Bill, masyado pang hindi pa hinog hilaw pa. Do you agree with that?
Well, I agree with that. That's one of the reasons why I'm suggesting. Mas maganda pa siguro kung sakaling talagang nagmamadali na siyang lumaban para sa isang world title. Might be easier to arrange one with a fellow Filipino.
Yes.
Okay, because one, they're his elders, the two reigning Filipino world champions in that division. So they might have a little more confidence in fighting him. And two, should he lose, there's no shame in it. Dahil nga sabi nga natin, medyo maaga-aga pa ng konti, has yet to reestablish himself. You're making a point about Mark Magsayo. We've discussed this before on the show that at that level, you have to overcome an elite fighter who is naturally at that weight.
Yes.
And for Jonas Sultan, he's taken the long and winding road back to become a contender. But we don't know what the next couple of weeks will bring. It's only early in the month of November. The ratings will come out later on in the month, and we don't know how having won that Intercontinental belt will impact his ratings in the other boxing organizations as well. But you're right. I do feel that there may be the need for an intermediate fight before going on for a world title. But then the question is, what is being offered to him? Diba? Parang ano bang mga pagpipilian niya? Gaya na sabi ko kanina, parang ang pinapain sa kanya yung rematch kay Caraballo, at alam nating delikado siya ron. Diba? So his options may be either to wait for a world title shot or wait for something better to come along, which will probably be early next year.
Bill, let's say that Sultan gets a couple of important wins in the future. Can you imagine a picture of Naoya Inoue being chased by 3 Filipino boxers?
Yeah. Sabi nga nila, ang haba ng hair niya. Marami siyang manliligaw. But Inoue is also very smart. He's playing it safe.
Yeah.
He's not going after the more dangerous fighter now. And that anticipation also has a time limit on it. If you remember, everybody wanted to see a Pacquiao Mayweather fight, and it happened 3 years later than it should have. It still set records in terms of pay-per-view, but I think still would have done more if it had been held a year or two earlier. So for me, that's the important thing. Inoue is playing his cards right, he's playing keep away from the Filipino world champions. But how long is that going to last until people will start thinking, hindi, ayaw naman niya talaga lumaban eh. Diba? Di wag na lang.
Bill, if you're the matchmaker of Jonas Sultan, which fight would you rather book? A fight against Naoya Inoue or a rematch with John Riel Casimero?
That's very interesting. I think Cuadro Alas has changed a lot. I think they're both dynamic fighters. But when you think about it, in either of those situations, Jonas Sultan will still be the underdog. Of course, not just because they're bigger names, but they're more experienced. They've been fighting at a much higher level. And like we said, it's been 3 years since he's tasted a world title shot. So there has to be still some more growth on the part of Jonas Sultan. So he leaves himself vulnerable a lot of times also. And he's proven, though, he can take a hit. But the question is, against somebody with more experience and more finesse, I don't see him really coming away a clear winner.
For our next special segment, we turn it over to Bill Velasco.
Thanks, partner. There's a saying, the only thing harder than becoming a champion is staying a champion. You're on top and everybody wants to knock you down and grab a piece of that belt for themselves. Let's take a look at some of the shortest reigns of Filipino world boxing champions. And for our first example, we have to go all the way back to 1963. 58 years ago, Roberto Cruz knocked out Battling Torres to win the vacant WBA World Super Lightweight title on March 21 and set a record that stood for more than half a century by losing it less than 3 months later via unanimous decision to Eddie Perkins on June 15th of that same year. So that's barely less than 3 months as a world champion. The next fighter to follow in those dubious footsteps is Franklin or Frank Cedeño. This southpaw defeated Charlie Magri by knockout in the 6th round on September 27, 1983 to win the WBC World Flyweight title. But unfortunately, in his very next outing, he lost it to Koji Kobayashi also by knockout, and that was on January 18, 1984. So he barely got past 3 months and lost his world title. What was most impressive about Frank Cedeño was that after that loss, he won 10 of his next fights, 9 of them by knockout, but unfortunately lost his next and only other world title shot against the legendary Gilberto Roman. Here's a very familiar name you probably thought would not be on this kind of a list. In November of 2016, Manny Pacquiao outpointed Jesse Vargas for the WBO World Welterweight Championship. I was at ringside for that fight, and Manny just totally outclassed Vargas, sending him tumbling in one of the early rounds. And Vargas was so nervous despite being much taller and much younger than Pacquiao, and he just embarrassed himself and lost in that fight. Unfortunately for the Pac-Man, on June 2 of 2017, because he was not fighting as often as he used to, Pacquiao lost the title via a very controversial, and if you ask me, fake, unanimous decision against Jeff Horn in Australia. Now, those of you who saw the fight are probably thinking to yourselves, how could he have lost that fight? We're still wondering that to this day. Now, we were talking about Roberto Garcia's record earlier. The first boxer to break that record in over half a century, that dubious title goes to Marvin Sonsona. On September 4, 2009, he defeated Jose Lopez via unanimous decision for the WBO World Super Flyweight title. But in just 77 days, lost it not inside the ring, but on the weighing scale when he was 2.6 pounds over the limit. And in that fight, he still got a draw against Alejandro Hernandez, but inevitably lost it for good in his next fight against Wilfredo Vasquez Jr. Our honorable mention on this list, Milan Melindo, on September 16, 2017, finally, he had already been world champion as the IBF World Light Flyweight King. Then he won the IBO version of that title over Heki Butler via split decision. We all know how Milan Melindo fights. It takes him some time, very methodical. He's not really known to be explosive right off the bat kind of boxer. Unfortunately, on New Year's Eve of that same year, he suffered the first of 2 straight losses and was never in a position to be a world champion again. Now you ask yourself, why is it so hard to repeat as world champion? First of all, there's a certain amount of relaxation that sets in when you finally achieve the goal that you've been working hard for so many years. Secondly, everybody is gunning for you. Everybody's training extra hard to get what you have. And third, sometimes they rush you back into the ring, as in the case of Melindo, and you're not really ready. Your mindset is not, totally focused on winning again, since you've already celebrated as a champion. And lastly, in the case of many Filipino promoters, it's very expensive to hold a world title fight in the Philippines, so they end up fighting overseas in enemy territory. And that is our list of one-shot wonders, Filipinos who have had the shortest reigns as world boxing champions.
It's time for our Fearless Fighter of the Day, brought to you by Eastern Communications. And he's none other than Arnel Bacunaje from San Rafael, Iloilo, who has a professional record of 14-4 with 11 wins by way of knockout. Bacunaje is riding high on a 3-fight winning streak, with 2 of those victories coming by way of stoppage. The 28-year-old is set to vie for the vacant WBC Asia Super Lightweight Championship in Russia on Saturday, November 13, against hometown favorite Ivan Kozlovsky. Arnel Bacunaje is our fearless fighter. Now is the time for reliable connections. Eastern Communications Fiber One is ideal for powering small, medium enterprises that are on their way to digitizing their business and pushing forward to a strong and fearless tomorrow. Do contact 53007,000 or visit their website eastern.com.ph for more information about the service. And that's our Eastern Communications Fearless Fighter of the Day. That's the final bell for today's episode of Round by Round, presented by Eastern Communications. I'm Nisi Casiano.
And I'm Bill Velasco. We are on Facebook at 6 p.m. Mondays to Fridays, and on YouTube at 7 p.m. right after. So please, please, please like, share, follow, and subscribe right now.
Dennis Principe, Attorney Ed Tolentino, and yours truly will be working the fights for you on Monday. So catch us on the next Round by Round. All boxing, all Filipino, all the time. Happy weekend and see you on Monday.